Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Fed Up, your no BS nutrition podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Marie, certified personal trainer and nutrition specialist, working with clients since 2014. After swimming up diet culture's bullshit stream for so many years, I am fed the absolute up with how miserable it's making people feel when we are supposed to be getting healthier. This podcast is here to help you gain your sanity back so you can stop yo-yoing once and for all and finally learn how to trust yourself so you can enjoy food again without fear or shame while still getting to your health goals. My aim is to teach you how to detect the BS in not just the food and diet industries, but in all realms of life, because I know that, like me, we are all just a little fed up. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome on back to another Fed Up podcast episode number 61. Thank you for tuning back in. Hope you're having a lovely summer. We are talking today about Ellen Satter and her concept for the hierarchy of food needs. And essentially, it is built on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you reach from safety, the foundation of, basic physiological needs, food, shelter, water, and then all the way up to like your potential for self-actualization. And essentially, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is talking about how you cannot reach your fullest potential if you don't have a house to shelter you from the storm, so to speak. You don't have enough food to actually be able to function. And then it goes up to love and belonging. So if you don't have any community, or if you were never loved by your parents, there are going to be these deficits into your potential for self-actualization, right? So Ellen Satter is a renowned researcher, registered dietitian, author. She is considered the expert in feeding and eating. And so essentially, she worked with a lot of adults as a registered dietitian, and she was following the standard, here is a prescription diet, eat more vegetables, here's what the recommended dietary intake is, right? And then she noticed she was making her clients worse. They would come in with an okay relationship with food, and then she would try to get them to eat more vegetables or get them to eat more protein or less saturated fat or less fast food or whatever it may have been, right? And then they were coming in obsessed, or they were gaining weight back, or they were whatever it may be. They were getting worse mentally as well as some of them physically. And so it led into her doing a lot of research on humans, starting with how parents feed their children, which is why we call it feeding and eating, because it's not just about you eating yourself, but that was a funny sentence, but it's also about how it starts with the parent-child feeding relationship, right? We didn't just feed ourselves starting as babies or even year 1 or year 5, right? So we relied on caregivers to feed us and develop this relationship with food. And then we become adults that are now autonomous adults, and we have to decide what to eat, how to eat. And then we are also pressured and marketed to by diet culture and companies that are selling you products, and we're bombarded with fast food and grocery stores and availability for food in a lot of places, not everywhere, but in a lot of places. So all of these things combined, the way you come to the table is more important than the actual food, is what she came down to. So it wasn't really about the vegetables. It was the fact that you were bribing your children to eat the vegetables, right? It wasn't really about your children getting enough nourishment as children. It was about making sure they finished their plate. And now you had an adult who struggled to know when they were full because they have to finish their plate, right? Or they have to eat everything on their plate in order to eat dessert. So now you always overeat because you have to eat savory and then dessert, rather than maybe eating a little bit less of each so that you have a full meal, or sometimes having an afternoon treat before dinner. Oh, that's crazy for some people. So as again, we are looking at the feeding and eating relationship, or developing your own concept of how to feed yourself, we are talking about what Ellen Satter calls eating competence, and what she defines as attaining eating competence in essential in juxtaposition to like Maslow's as self-actualization all the way at the top of the hierarchy, right? So the top of the hierarchy, Ellen Satter considers what she calls eating competence. And how she describes this is being positive, comfortable, and flexible with eating. It is trusting your body to regulate food intake while being matter-of-fact and reliable about getting enough personally enjoyable, nourishing food to eat. So, let's go through the hierarchy of food needs according to Ellen Satter's eating competence model. Starting at the bottom of the hierarchy, so in the sense the foundational needs that you will have to have in order to go through and go up the hierarchy, so to speak, is going to be enough food. The next one up, acceptable food or personally acceptable food. The next one up, reliable, ongoing access to said foods. The next one up, good tasting food. The next one, novel food or new food. The next one at the top of eating competence hierarchy is called instrumental food. So let's go through each one a little more in detail here. Starting at the bottom again, enough food. If you don't have enough food to eat, then likely you are not getting to choose what to eat, right? This is kind of where diet culture gets a lot of stuff wrong because they're assuming that if you eat for anything other than to survive or anything other than just fuel only, they're ignoring the fact that you have access to more food than the bare minimum to survive. And if you are suffering from food insecurity, you don't have enough food, then whatever is enough is literally enough and you don't really get any choice past that, right? So there it is. But you can willingly be keeping yourself here by restricting yourself, right? And not actually giving yourself enough food. Or you can literally not have enough access to food, right? So if you are living in the middle class or even a little bit of the like lower middle class of the Western world, most likely you have enough food. You might not have the best food. You might not have what you want. You might not be able to buy all the groceries that you want, but like you're not dying of starvation and you don't have like malnutrition, right? So if you have enough food, check that off the list. Now we can move up the hierarchy. You have to have enough acceptable food. So this is where like most probably lower middle income, like the quote unquote American poor is probably at. So you are going to gravitate toward personally acceptable, tasting, tolerable foods. Meaning, again, if you were to strip everything away, barely have enough to eat, but you have like just enough, you're going to choose what you like, right? So you're not starving, but you maybe don't have a lot of food. So you're going to be able to have some choice and you choose acceptable food. Now, this is what's interesting. When you are stuck here, it's easy to teeter kind of like throughout the first 1, 2, 3 steps of this hierarchy, enough food, acceptable food. And then the third one, reliable, ongoing access to food. So maybe you have enough food sometimes, but if you don't all the time, that's going to create problems, right? This is also, again, you can take this literally. Say you are living in a third world country or you have food insecurity, you don't have enough money, you're literally starving. But then some days you get paid and you're able to buy food, right? So maybe sometimes you're starving and sometimes you're not. So the first 3 is really ultimately just about the foundation of having enough food that is like edible and that you enjoy or that you will eat. Not even enjoy, you will eat it. So now that you have enough food, acceptable food, and reliable ongoing access to food, you can move on to actually deciding to choose good tasting food. This is probably why a lot of the like lower income, but again, like just enough income, they maybe have some access to food. But if you only had $10 to spend on food, you're going to spend it on things that taste good. Why are you going to waste it, so to speak, quote unquote, on like food that you don't like or food that won't get eaten, right? So if you know your children are going to eat applesauce, you will buy the applesauce. But if you don't think that they're going to eat the apples and they cost a little bit more, the whole apple, you're not going to buy the whole apple. You're going to buy the applesauce. So you can judge people all you want for what they buy in their grocery cart. But when you actually look at it this way, again, this is two things that we're talking about. One is actual like food security. You get enough food. Now you can actually go grocery shopping. You choose the foods that's going to feed your family for the best dollar, right? But also, this is why when you don't give yourself enough food security, like say you can go buy whatever you want, right? But you yourself are restricting diet culture. You're restricting because you're calorie counting and macro counting and et cetera, et cetera. And then you have ongoing access to whatever foods you want, but you restrict yourself, right? Now, when you're exposed to good tasting food, it is a lot harder to choose willingly foods that are good for you, which are called instrumental food. This is the eating competence that we're trying to achieve, is being able to choose a food that's like good for you and also make it taste good. And like, it's when you want to eat a salad because you actually want to eat a salad and you make it satiating, which is like filling. You make it balanced. You are not eating it because you want to lose weight. You're not eating it because you hate yourself and you can't have dressing and you're missing out on the burger and fries that everybody else is ordering. And like, you hate the fact that you ordered a salad. No, that's not eating competence. That is choosing a shit tasting food because you're restricting yourself to not having enough food. Right? So again, if you're at this next level of good tasting food, this is why you might binge. This is why you might linger on that like quote unquote poverty line where if you have a little bit of extra money, you're going to buy the donuts because why the fuck not? Enjoy life, right? It's already hard enough. You're going to buy some Twinkies. Or you're restricting yourself so much that eventually you say, fuck it, I'm going to eat the Twinkies, right? Do you see the parallel here? You can kind of apply it in both the sense of like actual why you can't just tell people, just eat better because it's so psychological. And then you add in the socioeconomic factors as well, which just adds so much more complexity into this model. But regardless, let's move on here. The next step up, now you have enough food. You have reliable, ongoing access to food that you accept and that tastes good. Now you are willing to explore and try novel foods in order to satisfy both your appetite and your nutritional quality. So Ellen Satter from her website, it says, feed yourself reliable. No, wait, I think I wrote this. This is not a quote. Sorry, this is not a quote. Feed yourself reliably. Good tasting food, right? And then you can try new ones. When you introduce forbidden foods from diet culture, or you can actually buy food that like you're not sure if you're going to like. Or when you go out to a restaurant, you can be more willing to expose yourself to new foods because one, you have access, like you're going to a restaurant, which means that's a luxury, right? And you're also willing to try to just like enjoy a salad, or you're willing to eat the brownie even though you never allowed yourself to eat the brownie before. Or if you're like me and you come from lower socioeconomic class and a very, very, very picky eating family, possibly ARFID, I won't diagnose anybody else but myself, but you're afraid of new foods. Neophobia, I think is what they call it. So when you're afraid of trying new foods, a lot of kids go through this. This is totally normal human behavior. And then if you're on the spectrum, you have ADHD, you have textural issues or sensory issues, or you're simply like genetically primed to be a picky eater, because I believe in that wholeheartedly. Just talk to all 50 of my family members. So if you don't have a lot of exposure to foods and you're unwilling to try foods, you're not going to be able to reach eating competence, right? This is when like, quote unquote, I don't like saying this, but like ARFID or picky eaters, they'll kind of eat like toddlers, right? And so it's this rudimentary way of eating because it's safe. It's like always the same. We can reliably predict the texture. We can reliably predict the taste. And it doesn't have to exhaust our brains or our senses to order the same thing every time, right? And so when you're willing to try new food, you're willing to actually diversify your diet. And the healthiest diet is diversity. So that's where we want to be. And now that you are willing to try new foods and expand beyond the like really strict and rigid diet culture meal plan that you've had set for yourself, or you have these like, again, maybe limited exposure to foods before because you didn't have a lot of food security. Both apply. Now you can reach eating competence, which is what Ellen Satter talks about at the very top of her hierarchy, is when you get to choose instrumental food. So again, we went through enough food, enough acceptable food, reliable ongoing access to food, good tasting food, novel new food, and now we're at instrumental food, which is when we marry food security and optimal nutrition quality. You're getting enough protein and vegetables and fiber, and you're eating 3 meals a day and you're actually feeding yourself enough calories. Now you actually add in this element of conscious choice to be able to choose an enjoyable food that is also nutritious. And when you look at the entirety of your diet, you're getting, again, enough of the quality, nutrient-dense foods that we all talk about. And it's not just an afterthought to make it taste good. So we're not trying to healthify our brownies with black beans and sweet potatoes and it tastes like crap. However, I like chocolate and I have some sweet potatoes to use up. And why not have a 7 grams of fiber, brownie that has sweet potatoes in it, right? But if you're using it mentally as this diet culture, I can't have a real brownie, that's when you're, again, restricting and you're not allowing yourself the full conscious decision of this food freedom that doesn't just mean binge on brownies. It means you are choosing mostly instrumental food that nourishes your body for real, but also nourishes your soul and your mind. And you've reached what we call normal eating. And normal eating, if you were to, again, ask Miss Ellen Satter what normal eating is, I saved it the other day. Let me see if I can pull it up. Normal eating is when you achieve eating competence. Defined by Ellen Satter, normal eating is, and this is from her website, quote, arriving at the table hungry and eating until you are satisfied. Being able to choose food you enjoy and to eat it and truly get enough of it, not just stopping eating because you think you should. Giving some thought to your food selection so you get nutritious food, but not being so wary and restrictive that you miss out on enjoyable food. Giving yourself permission to eat because you are happy, sad, or bored, or just because it feels good and tastes good. Generally eating 3 meals a day, or even 4 or 5, or it can occasionally be choosing to munch and graze along the way. Normal eating is overeating at times, feeling stuffed and uncomfortable. And it can also be undereating at times, wishing that you had had more. Normal eating is trusting your body to make up for the mistakes in your eating and giving food and eating some of your time and attention, but keeps its place as only one important area of your life, part of your life. Normal eating is flexible. It varies in response to your hunger, schedule, proximity to food, and even your feelings. So when we talk about normal eating, we're not talking about the best, most nutrient, clean way to eat. We're also not talking about eat whatever the F you want with no regards to nutritional status, to hunger, to satiety, to satisfaction, to real satisfaction, because a lot of people who accidentally overeat or binge eat pretty frequently often say that it didn't even taste good, right? They didn't even enjoy it. But honestly, all of us overeat at Thanksgiving. We overeat at the Super Bowl. It's gonna be okay, right? So it's making this a part of your life. It's being able to choose those instrumental foods while also being able to be flexible and choose good tasting foods and use food as a way that humans have always used food. It's always been more than just survival. And anyone who tells you differently has never actually studied archaeological humans. Yeah, we're keeping that sentence. They haven't really looked at the evidence of the ways that humans have always used food to connect, to celebrate, to worship, to elicit status. It's way more than just eat your protein. So I hope this helps give some insight into what I often talk about, normal eating or eating competence, and sort of the model that I base a lot of my coaching off of as well. So if you're looking to work with a nutrition coach, I am accepting clients. So visit my website. And if you have any questions, just shoot me an email or a DM over on Instagram. So looking forward to chatting at you again. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. See you next week. Nope, I'll talk at you next week. I have no idea who you are. Just kidding. I love you all. Thanks for being here. Bye. Thanks so much for being here, friends. If you enjoyed this episode, please screenshot and tag me over on Instagram or leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening from. Your support means the world to me and only helps me get the no BS news out to more people. If you're interested in working with me in nutrition or personal training, check out my programs and courses on my website at kaylamariefitness.com and on Instagram at kaylamarie_fit. See you next week.